Time to talk about some books that unfortunately did not meet expectations this year. Hi everyone, my name's Chloe, welcome back to my channel. Thank you for being here today. Today's video is a Bookmas video. I am posting a new video every day up until Christmas Day, up to and including Christmas Day actually. It's 25 days of content and we are at the final stretch. I've said this in the last few videos now, but basically we are now sort of wrapping up the reading for the year, and unfortunately that does mean I have to talk about some books that I didn't particularly love. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying I'm not doing a worst books of 2021 list. The books on this list I didn't necessarily not enjoy, but they didn't live up to what I thought they were going to be. That's the main thing, is that they just disappointed me in some way. Doesn't mean I hated them, it just means that they weren't quite as good as what I wanted them to be, or they didn't quite do what I wanted them to do. That could be completely on me. I could have gone into this with the wrong expectations entirely, or it could just be that actually they don't fit with my reading taste. Anything that is on this list, not a bad book. If you liked it, good for you. I would hope that there is at least one person who likes every single book, because we all have different tastes, and it's nice to think that there is at least one person for every book that is written out there. Anyway, enough of the disclaimer. I feel like you have to put these sort of disclaimers at the beginning of these types of videos, even though I kind of hate that we have to do that as well. It's something we have to do. So I'm actually just going to talk about some books that I was a little bit disappointed in this year. I don't have most of these anymore, I will say. I'm going to start off actually with the two that I still have physically, because although these are the ones that I've kept, these are actually the ones that I'm probably most disappointed in a way, just because they're ones that I love books by these authors previously, and something about these ones let me down, but not to the point I'm going to run haul them. I mean, it could actually be a case of that if I read it from another author, I'd either like it more because I wasn't sort of comparing it to something that I'd read previously or expecting something more from it because I loved the author's previous work, or it could be that I'd like them less because I wasn't sort of biased because I like the author's previous work. We'll never know, I suppose. But the first one that I'm going to talk about is Instructions for Dancing by Nicola Yoon. So I enjoy Nicola Yoon's writing. I really loved Everything and The Sun Is Also a Star, and I was really excited she had a new book coming out. This one sounded really intriguing. It had a little bit of a fantasy twist to it as well. It's basically about a girl who, whenever she sees a couple kiss, she can sort of see what their future is going to be, and she can see sort of the end of their relationship. Because as kind of horrible as it sounds, every relationship is going to end at some point, whether that's much later on when you've lived a long happy life and it's sort of on your deathbed, or whether there is an imminent breakup about to happen. But basically she's already a little bit jaded about romance anyway, and this new ability doesn't particularly help. And then she ends up at this dance school and she meets this boy there, and they're going to be in a dance competition together, and it's about her sort of hesitancy to start a relationship with him. And I wanted so much more from this book. The concept of it sounded amazing, but it just felt like the fantasy element of it was sort of only added for convenience, and there wasn't really any sort of resolution to it. It also was one of those where it kind of just stopped being mentioned at some point, and yeah, I didn't get the payoff that I wanted from this book. I didn't hate it. I think I gave it a 3 stars, but it just had so much potential, especially being from a writer that I know I like their writing style, and it just didn't live up to what I wanted it to be. It's quite a short book as well. I think it could have benefited from having a little bit more time to explore more of the themes that it wanted to go into. But yeah, didn't love it, didn't hate it. Bit disappointing just because I really thought I would love it. The other one that I still have physically is Lost in the Netherwoods by Aidan Thomas. So I really love Aidan Thomas's first book, Cemetery Boys. The thing I will say though is that wasn't actually their first book. This was the debut, but then they decided to publish them in a different order. So Cemetery Boys was written after this one, and I do think you can see the improvement between Lost in the Netherwoods and Cemetery Boys. This one is a Peter Pan retelling. It's set many years after Wendy has returned from Neverland, but when she returned, she came back with Alta brothers, and no one really knows what happened to them. And it's years later, and children start disappearing in the town again, and then a mysterious stranger called Peter appears, and it's about figuring out what the link is and whether or not what she remembers from Neverland is actually real, because she's kind of convinced herself it isn't. And again, this had a lot of potential, and particularly because I loved Cemetery Boys so much, I thought this was going to be fantastic, but the pacing was just all over the place. There was also a lot of stuff where there were these kids going missing and no one seemed to care. There was just like these really random throwaway chapters about sort of ridiculous things that did not need to be in the story, when nobody was actually bothered that these kids were disappearing. And yeah, the pacing was just strange. It was just a lot of... He just sort of plodded along with a lot of Wendy wondering things but not actually doing anything until it got to the end, and then finally it started to kick in, but it was much too late in the story for me to really enjoy it. So yeah, again, I think I gave it like a 3 stars. This one could have been closer to a 2 actually, but I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. I'll keep it on my shelves because it's really pretty and it goes with Cemetery Boys, and I'm still really excited for Aidan Thomas's next book because, like I said, with them being published out of order, I do think there's been improvement in the writing style already, and I'm hoping that continues into their next book. So all the rest of them I've already unhauled, or actually some of them I just never owned physically anyway. We'll start off with one of those. That is Love is a Revolution by Renee Watson. Now, I was excited for this one because I have been wanting to read a Renee Watson book for a while, and I got this one as an ARC. So I thought I'd start with this one. I do have another Renee Watson book on my shelves, and it's putting me off reading it because I did not like this one. It is basically all about activism. It's the main character's cousin, I believe it was, joins this group where they are sort of like attending marches, doing protests, being activists to try and make change happen, and the main character doesn't want to get involved in that, and until there's a boy involved, then she sort of lies and pretends that she's an activist. And the main character in this is really unlikable, which I can normally find with unlikable main characters, but there was just nothing to root for at all with this main character. I disagreed with everything that she was doing, so I just didn't really get the point of it, to be honest. I ended up skimming through quite a lot of it because I just couldn't get along with it at all. And the reason why it's a disappointment is just because I had such high hopes for this author's writing, and now it is, like I said, putting me off reading other things, even though I think I will much prefer some of her other work. But yeah, unfortunately it has to be on this list. Next up we have Gideon the Ninth by Tanzin Muir. So basically all I'd heard about this book was lesbian necromancers, and it's very, very weird. To me that sounded fantastic. I knew it was some people's favourite book of all time. I knew it was very polarising, but I did think I would fall on the side of really enjoying it, and I just didn't. The thing is that I wouldn't call it weird necessarily, I'd just call it nonsensical. Again, the pacing just seemed really strange to me. It just felt like things were sort of thrown at you and there was no real world building. And then I've heard people say it's supposed to sort of make sense by the end, but by the end I just lost interest so much that it could have made sense, but I wouldn't have got it because I just didn't care. And I know I've had this rant on a video before, but yeah, I just could not get along with this book at all, and it really upset me because I really, really wanted to love this series, but it's not for me, clearly. Another series that is just not for me and is also just really hard to understand because it's a mess of world building, and that is Fwitch by Susan Dennard. I know I said that this isn't about books I dislike, but it seems more and more like I'm just ranting about these books, but this was just all over the place. It couldn't decide what it wanted to be. It was a YA book, but then it also wanted to have the intricacies of an adult fantasy, and the world building was done in a way where it just wasn't, to be honest. It was just a lot of information thrown at you with no real explanation of what any of it meant. And I read the first 2 books in this series and then just gave up because I'm just like, I honestly have no clue what's happening. I couldn't really tell you what any of the storylines were. All I know is that in this world there are different types of witches that have different powers. One of the main characters is a truth witch, which is supposed to be really sort of like politically advantageous, but to be honest she wasn't a very good truth witch anyway, so God knows why anybody would be interested in using her powers. But a truth witch basically can tell if somebody is lying, and yeah, I can't really tell you too much else about it, but I did have fun watching the live shows that were done for this series just because everyone else seemed really confused as well and just went on rants about it, and it was really fun to be like, oh, it's not just me. Great, thanks for that. Another one that unfortunately I just couldn't quite grasp with sort of the world building and the pacing of it was Witches Steeped in Gold by Shannon Smart. Again, one that I was really, really looking forward to, and this one is one where I can say it's not a bad book and I can understand why people would like it, but the pacing for me just didn't quite work. I couldn't figure out where I was in the storyline and what the world building was, so then I lost interest and I was listening to the audiobook. So I know that a big part of this is that I just probably stopped concentrating as much because from the offset I felt like I was just sort of lagging behind a little bit, and if I feel like I have to play catch up with something and I'm sort of falling behind, I just give up and I don't pay attention. I know that that's what I'm like when I'm reading things, so I know that this was probably partly a me issue as well, but unfortunately yeah, the pacing just didn't work for me and I couldn't quite figure out what was happening in the story enough to actually enjoy it. Next up we have House of Hollow by Crystal Sutherland. So this one had a really good premise. Again, it was about these three sisters who had sort of gone missing when they were children, and since they come back they'd been changed and acted slightly strange, especially when they were all together as a set, and then they'd sort of been separated, they'd all gone off and sort of started living their lives, and things were going fairly normal for the main character until one of her sisters goes missing, and that is all linked back to where they went when they disappeared many years ago. And this premise sounded amazing, and to be honest, the atmosphere at the beginning of this book was fantastic. I really loved it, but it was a very short book and it felt like it just didn't leave itself enough time to actually have a satisfying ending. It just felt very rushed, and I felt like it was a lot of build up to not very much happening at the end. And yeah, that's why it's a disappointment. Again, didn't hate it, didn't love it. I just felt like it could have been so much more. If you'd just added an extra 100 pages, I think you could have done so much more with it. Then we have Tash Heart's Tolstoy by Catherine Ormsby. The reason why this one's disappointing is that I've owned it for a while and really look forward to reading it. It has ace representation in here, and it sounded like it was going to be a really good book about that, and it just wasn't, to be honest. I don't really know what it was supposed to be. It was about 5 different storylines all happening at once, about this mini series that they were making, and then this internet creator that she was talking to, and then something happening with the best friend, and then eventually there was talk about sort of her being ace as well. Even though that's something that's established from the character right at the very beginning, it's only really something that is discussed at all in sort of like the very last section of the book, but that's kind of what the book is advertised as, and it just lost its way. There was way too many things all happening at once, but couldn't quite pick what it was that it actually wanted to talk about. So again, not awful, but just a little bit messy. It's probably how I would describe this book. I have 2 more to talk about. These are ones where I sort of actively get angry talking about these books, so I'm going to try and keep it brief. First, we have American Royals Majesty, which I've already talked about a few times on this channel, but basically this is the second book in a sort of fluffy YA contemporary series about what would happen if America had a royal family rather than a presidency. And the first one I enjoyed for what it was a fun ride, and then the second one basically just dismantled any relationship that was set up in the first one within the first 30 pages, and I just don't know how I was then meant to just sort of move on really quickly and root for these new relationships. It just made no sense. I understand maybe like a couple of them changing around, but like every single one was just completely changed. Nobody at the end of this book was with the person that you expected them to be with at the end of the first book, and I don't get it. I don't get why you made that choice, but you do you. Next one, the last one we have to talk about, is May the Best Man Win, which I can't actually remember the author of this book because I read it a while ago. I'm going to put a picture of the cover here anyway. I just looked it up because I needed to double check the synopsis anyway, but it's Z.R. Ella. So this is about 2 characters who used to date. One of them is a trans male character, so they used to date before he transitioned, and it's basically about the 2 of them competing for Homecoming King, and it's just about sort of like the leftover conflicts and things from their relationship and whether or not that's going to be rekindled and all of that sort of drama. But the problem is that the main characters in this book were just awful people. They did horrible things to each other all the way through, and as I said before, I'm fine with unlikable characters, but these people were just plain horrible people. Like, they were just vile to each other, and I don't get why I would want to root for them to be together, to be honest. So I didn't, and I just really did not like this book. I kind of hate read it a little bit. So yeah, that is all I'm going to say on that one. Right, I have figured out that I actually really dislike talking about books that I don't like, because now I just feel really bitter and horrible and I don't like it. Like I said, I didn't even dislike all of these books. I just don't like saying negative things. So what I'm going to do is a pre-filming day. I'm going to go and talk about some books that I actually really loved. Thank you guys for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff down below. Let me know if there's some books that really disappointed you this year, and I will see you guys tomorrow with a happier video. Bye.